So I'm going to do a demo, and these are the things which I'm going to walk you through. So the web console, backup recovery, disaster recovery, right? We're going to talk about the backup proxy as well, the virtual appliance, how to deploy it and all that. So I'm going to cover all that. Stop me whenever you like if you have questions. I'm going to switch to my demo screen here. So just give me a moment. So first of all, being hosted in AWS and being an SOA architecture completely, the customer doesn't deal with AWS console at all. So what they are dealing with is this console, which is Phoenix console. And when they log in, they see the entire dashboard. That's a bird's eye view, wherein they can see how their backups are performing. If there are any alerts, anything failing, they get a very good view out of here, right? What you can see is it has been broken down into multiple sections. One is physical server, virtual machines, cloud cache, and number of snapshots, right? So if you have SQL, you can back up. Windows file servers, Linux servers, you can back up. VMs, you can clearly see if you have a vCenter, standalone ESXi, we can support that. And how much data is being restored, how many snapshots have been managed in the system, you can view that as well, right? I'm going to go into the retention policy as well, like how you can maintain the retention policy, what goes into hot, warm, and cold. So I'm going to come to that as well. But talking about how the storage is consumed, so at the bottom, if you see this particular widget is very important, right? So this is my source data. It's somewhere around 5.5 terabytes. It's being deduped to 2.24. It includes also like 14 terabytes is including change, but it's being deduped to 2.24 terabyte. That's the consumed storage which the customer pays for. We don't care number of physical servers you have. We don't care number of VMs you have. We don't care number of locations you have. All we care about is this particular number. And this is, as Ram and Jesse were talking about, it is a credit-based system. So you can quickly go and look at your storage usage. And you can also look at your credits balance. And this is a monthly report which can be generated. And if you have different departments, by the way, so for example, if you're a large organization, you want to bill the other part of the organization, there's a section which talks about billing itself. So what you can do is you can do cost allocation as well. So you can have codes associated to a particular department. When you generate a report, each department will have them billed by the credit, so you know how much credits they're using and all that, right? Which is a perfect segue for me to talk about organizations, how organizations can be set up, how the granular admin rights can be set up here in Phoenix. So you can have multiple admins log in. We can tie with Okta or single sign-on, whatever you prefer. We can tie with that for authentication. But the concept of organization is to make sure that if you have different verticals and you do not want these different verticals to share any resources. For example, you don't want organization A admin to go and do a restore for organization B admin. You want that abstraction. You can very easily create these orgs and make sure that happens. I'm going to go into one of the orgs. When you go inside them, this will show you the org-related data. It will show you how VMs are backing up and all that, right? Sorry, I didn't select it. So this is where the org is. Now what I'll do is I'll very quickly go to servers and show you how exactly the server restore looks like. If you want to configure a server for the first time, what you will do is you will say register new server, and you will go to a particular link. This link will allow you to download the agent, depending on whether it's Windows, SQL, or Linux. You will download it. Once you have downloaded, you create a token. Now this token can be generated. And if you have a deployment tool, you can make sure that the MSI package, which we have, you bundle the token with it. You create a package and you deploy. So you can deploy to multiple servers, and you can control how many number of servers, how long the token is valid, and all that, right? I'm not going to do that. I have a bunch of servers which are registered already here. So
okay. I'm confused here for a sec, because you're talking about installing a Windows or Linux agent. So I'm installing an agent in every guest, not using the
No, this is physical servers. So if you have physical servers, if you want to install an agent, you can do that.
Fine.
Okay. Can you do bare metal restores to physical servers?
No, we don't do that. Okay. Coming to configured servers, I have this bunch of servers which are configured, backing up. I'm going to pick one server over here and click on restore just to show you how the restore experience looks like. For the admin, they will first see what the content they are backing up, whether it's file plus SQL both. So in this server, I have file and SQL both. So I can go and choose whether it's file server or SQL. And then I can choose which snapshot I want to pick. But if you notice over here, we have hot, warm, and cold, 3 buckets where the admin can choose from. Hot is your cloud cache. So whatever they pick from cloud cache It's restoring from cloud cache itself, local. Warm is coming from cloud. This is coming from S3. And cold is where you can go and pick an older snapshot, and you can browse. By the way, we allow you to browse and all that. You can go and pick a file to restore only after you defreeze the snapshot. This is only for cold. If it's warm, you can quickly go and restore. So when you do defreeze snapshot, we will bring the snapshot back into warm, and you can restore from warm itself. Any questions?
As far as a complete restore then, say that server's gone, what's the options? Just to bring this to Amazon and that's it?
No, you can register a new server, and let me show you that. So if you're replacing the server, so there's a workflow to replace a server.
A file level back
That's
to
right.
that server?
Yes, yes. But let me talk about warm a little bit. So let me pick this entire data set, right? So if I click on restore, you have option to restore back to the same server, or you can restore to a different server. And you can select all the registered servers you have. But you have to install the agent first.
Have that server built.
Yes, so that we can do a restore. Okay.
Not so bad for VMs. Clone template, install agent. Yeah. A lot worse for bare metal.
Talking about VMware, so let me quickly switch to VMware here. Now, depending on what setup you have, whether you have a standalone ESXi or vCenter, we can work with both. What you have to do is to register a VMware setup for the first time, you will have to deploy. You have to download an OVF template, which is provided by Druva. Again, the same link. I'm not going to open it again, but if you see over here, there are two different types. One is for standalone ESXi, and if you have a vCenter, you can use a different. You have to download a different OVF template over here. The difference between the two is, if you're deploying for ESXi, you have to do it manually. Whereas if you have a vCenter, we can tie into the web console itself. So you don't have to log into the proxy. You can provide the parameters from the web console itself, and it is deployed, activated, and everything, right? So once you have the proxy deployed and activated, I'm going to pick this ESXi setup here. The first thing it does, it lists all the VMs which you have. If you have a vCenter, I'm going to show you a vCenter setup as well. This is a standalone ESXi. I have 2 backup proxies deployed here. So number of backup proxies deployed depends on how many VMs you have. Right? A single backup proxy can handle up to a certain number of VMs. We're going to go into that as well. But you can create a pool as well, pool of backup proxies. Here I have 2 backup proxies in a pool. So if one is busy, the job will go to the next backup proxy in that pool itself. Right? Same as for restore. If one is busy, the restore job can be handled as well. So load balancing is done automatically if they're part of one pool itself. So once the backup proxy is deployed, you have the virtual machines listed. You can pick any virtual machine. Let me pick this. And you can just say configure VM for backup. And you select something which we call as a server group. So these are pre-created. The server groups is just to group your like servers together and have a backup policy attached to it, right? So if I go and select infra servers over here and click on next, this will go and select a pool, and it will automatically also go and select a policy. The policy around how often to backup, the backup schedule. Do I want to use CBT or not? Do I want to use quasi-hacking provided by VMware tools? Automatic retry, retention policy, everything is selected automatically. If you don't have a server group or backup policy, you can go and create one. But you don't have to go to individual screens to select that. You can do it from here itself. Once the machine has been configured for backup, it will go ahead and do a backup based on the schedule which you selected. So if you selected to backup like 7:30 p.m., let's start at that time, right? When the backup is happening, again, it's doing global dedupe. So if you have 2 locations, if there are VMs which are Windows VMs, the dedupe will kick in, right? So we'll only send unique blocks from the proxy to cloud. So that's by default.
Is there an API access to all the same features, or do you have to use the GUI?
You mean API for reporting and all that?
Yeah, for reporting and creating VMs and all of it, really.
And scripting.
And
We don't.
So today we don't. It's another thing on my wish list as well. Yeah.
We all have long lists.
Yes.
The dedupe is across your entire infrastructure then?
Yes, if you're backing up to the same region, so let's be very specific. Okay. So let's say if you are backing up to US West, which is, let's say, California or Oregon, so the dedupe is in that particular region itself.
Okay, and that's across
containerized
VMs, physical servers,
that is
everything
right.
you have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So will that also span your endpoint protection too?
Right now it doesn't,
okay.
But in future that's what our offering is, which we announced last week actually, that we call as Druva Cloud Platform. What it allows you to do is if you have different sources, right, and if it makes sense to do dedupe, then it will be able to do. Talking about the restore experience, you can click any VM and click on restore. This opens up a similar window what we saw earlier. Hot, warm, and cold, so I'm not going to dig deeper into that. But in a virtual environment, you can do 3 types of restore. You can do a file level restore, so you can grab one file or a couple of folders from inside a VM and you can do a restore. You can select a single VM decay and you can do that single VM decay restore as well. And you can do a full VM recovery as well. So whatever you guys choose, you can do that level of recovery. Any questions?
Being forever incremental then, is there any kind of health check or anything where you're storing the data?
So what we do is, and this is
something, it's your file system, I guess, that you've built
that
on
is
top
true.
of.
That is true. That is true. But what we do is to make sure that there's no data corruption on our side, right?
Yeah.
So I think one thing which didn't come out very clearly in the presentation is that we are separating metadata and the data, right? So the data is returned in S3, the metadata goes to DynamoDB, right? And what we also do is when we are writing an object into S3, we add a magic bit to it, right? So if there is bit rotting or corruption or anything, and if our process detects that the magic bit has gone wrong, right? So in that case, we have also maintained 2 other copies of the data. So we can go and fetch one of those copies and make sure that we replace it. So we make sure that this data integrity check runs on daily basis, make sure that the data is sane. So when you're trying to do a restore, you should be able to do that, okay? I'm going to close this. One thing probably you notice over here is that there's a column which says DR configured. Not every VM has been configured for DR, so I'm going to switch over to the DR piece side of things. But any questions from backup and restore perspective? Okay. So for DR, let me quickly do one thing. I'm going to go to my AWS console very quickly and log in. But in the meantime, let me switch over to one of the not configured DR policy, right? So for DR, the primary requirement from our side is that the customer should hold an AWS account. For backup and recovery, that's never a requirement, but for DR, yes. So if you don't have an AWS account, we request the customer to go and get an AWS account. And once you have the AWS account, this is how it looks in general. So if you see on the left side, this is the backup setup wherein we have the proxy which is running and continuously doing backups. And then we have the AWS account of the customer registered with us, right? So the way we register it, let me show you that very quickly. So if I go to disaster recovery, this is my AWS account which is registered already. We have something which we call as a DR proxy which is running in customer's AWS account as an EC2 instance. The expectation with this instance is that it's always running because this is the instance which does the conversion from VMDK to AMI, right? And this is also the instance which grabs the data from Druva's backup repository and brings it into the customer's AWS account. But the process to go and register the DR proxy involves you to create certain roles. So if you go to management and if you go to IAM roles, I'm not going to set up the roles here completely, but there's a DR role which we go ahead and create in customer's AWS account so that we allow this federation to happen, right? So that the proxy can go into it to Druva account and get the data and bring it back into the customer's account as well, right? So there are roles which have been created. Now, let me show you the proxy as well very quickly. So if I go to EC2, and if I show you the running instances, so we have this proxy which is always running. This is a EC2 instance. If you want to launch a new proxy, we publish the AWS instance IDs, so you can go in AMIs. And if you noticed on this download page, there is a select a region option as well, right? So depending on which region you want to do a DR, you'll go and select a proxy. We'll show you the ID itself. So let's say if I go and select California, right? So this is the AMI ID, which the customer has to go and pull out, and they can launch the instance, and that will be the DR proxy. Having said that, once I have the DR proxy up and running, what I have to do is go and create DR plans. What it means is a couple of things. First of all, I have to go and select what I want to do for recovery, what VPC do I want to use, what subnet do I want to use, and what security group do I want to use. And there are two options here. One is for security group, for the failover recovery actual. The other one is for failover test, right? Once you have specified this, what you can also do is click on edit, and you can select the frequency. How often do you want to go and patch the AMI in customer's account? What it means is that you can go and say that immediately after backup, I want the DR copy to be updated as well, right? Or you can select a different option like daily, weekly, whatever option you want to select. Once you have done that, you are going to go and select VMs which you want to set up for DR. You can say add more VMs. These are the VMs which are already configured. Now, you can pick a VM and have a different setting defined for the VM as well.
And we've got to do this VM by VM, right? I can't say back up all the VMs with this tag on this schedule.
That is true. Right now, we don't have that functionality. Yes. This is VM by VM. But here what I'm doing is I'm just defining different settings for my recovery and test. In this VM, which has been backing up, what I have done is I've defined an elastic IP as well. I'll go back to summary and do a failover very quickly. So when I click on failover, I can select either failover recovery or failover test. When I say test, what I can do is I can recover a bunch of VMs together, or I can just recover one VM, whichever one I want to do. So I'm going to go and pick this one, click on launch. That's it. So this is where our control ends, because now the AMI has to be booted up in your EC2 instance, right? You can go and check the failover history. You can see that it's been requested. This is the status. It's going to have a public IP address, which was an elastic IP, which was automatically assigned as part of the policy. But if I go over here, and if I refresh this particular screen, I should be able to see the new VM which is being launched. So there you go. It's going to take it's 5 to 10 minutes just to go initialize the VM, but it will have its IP address, and you can go and connect. I'm running a web page, so I can go and use that IP address and connect to it. But that's the failover. That's how the VM based on the backup copy is failed over into your AWS account.
So it's constantly then moving from Druva into your VPC?
It's customer's VPC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's constantly updating then?
Yes.
It's not something like it just creates it when you... Like it creates an AMI from the data within Druva?
It does. It's for the first time when it takes the VMDK, because there's no data in customer's account, so we'll take it and we'll create the AMI. But subsequent ones, as you back up, so schedule it.
So every backup then it basically syncs across.
And that is defined by you as a customer. Do you want to do every time a backup finishes, or do you want to do once a day, or do you want to do once a week? So it's up to you which copy you want to. So this one says that it does immediately after the backup. So if I'm running 3 backups in a day, every backup will go and have a AMI updated. Right? We check here, still refreshing. It's going to take a while to come up, but that's the DR piece of side of things. Any questions?
Is there any cost forecasting that happens with this? Because obviously you are running part of your product in the customer's account versus one here. So, with Amazon nickel and diming everything, is there any sort of forecasting that's done to the customer? Say, if you update this every single time after every single one of your backups, it's going to cost this versus batch processing it, once a day or once a week or something like that.
Yes.
So there is, and so I can take that if you don't mind, right? So I think we have a calculator that we provide to customers, and we work with them based on the plan. But essentially, think of it like there is a proxy cost. So it depends on the number of VMs. There's a running cost for proxy, but typically we've seen it's around $100-$150 a month. And then all of the images are stored in S3. So you're pretty much, on a standby basis, you're paying for the S3 storage for the images that are.
Yeah, but the S3 storage is part of your service. You're paying for it, not me.
No, so for the DR piece, it's in the customer's VPC. So we have a copy of the
They have to do that in
AMI.
their file system and into generic S3 on the VPC.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is not the backup copy, it's the DR copy. Right.
But I think really what would
Well,
probably
are we-
like a data pumper at
Are we
time
talking?
would
Are we
be-
talking about?
like
Are we
you
talking
can
about
initiate it.
Right.
Are we talking about the DR copy, or are we talking about the recovery copy? Because the thing people don't understand about DR is there's 2 pools of money. There's the money you pay every month, that's your money, and there's the money you pay after you declare a disaster, which is insurance company money. I don't care how much insurance company money I spend. So if it's, I need to pay for that so that I can do DR, that's my money. If I need to pay for that when I'm recovering, it's the insurance company's money. It's a big difference.
Right, and I think what he's got up here is, what your monthly would be to,
To be
store the
to
DR.
be
and-
Prepared.
To be
correct.
prepared,
It's a
yes.
standby
Yes.
cost.
Once you
That is
flip
correct.
those things on, then you get all.
Well, then I literally don't care, because that's the insurance company. Mark's going to pay for that.
Which one?
This Mark.
No, but to do this, you have to, if it's going to refresh this every day, right, so you'll be paying this already pre-disaster.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a question. Is there a cost saving in reducing the number of times you refresh this? Because you said, like I said, you had the option there of doing it as soon as the backup's done, or setting your refresh to be, daily or weekly. So is there,
And
how
what's
much activity is going on inside of there? Is there a cost difference?
and what's the RTO impact of?
I would say of not having this, right?
Well, no. If I'm doing my backups,
Right.
then I should be able to do a restore, recover to AWS.
Right.
That's going to take longer. We need to quantify that to some
Right.
extent.
If it's still in my
because I've
4-hour
got
window.
Well, I've got applications with a 4-hour window.
Right.
I got applications with a 4-day window.
Yep.
So both are possible, right? So there are customers who actually do a recovery into AWS, and that's just set up. You stand up an EC2 instance and do a recovery just like another server, sort of data center. So that's absolutely possible. And for that, there is no additional cost, because they're not running any proxy or.
Well, there's RTO cost.
There is RTO cost,
cost,
correct?
yeah.
Exactly.
RTO is going to be longer.
And at the after recovery, then they pay for that running cost.
Right.
Right. In this case, this is more where they want very much tighter RTOs, right? Like, because the AMI is ready to be booted, and as he demoed, the instance should be up and running by now, right? So if you're looking at in the minutes range, then what they have to run a proxy. Today, the proxy runs all the time. So I don't think there is any cost difference between your choice of doing it every backup versus every day or every week. But we're looking at optimizations to be able to turn on and turn off the instance as well. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and we're still all talking about backup paradigm. So
Correct.
So I'm sending data to this proxy probably daily. Could be less, but probably daily.
It depends on how quickly I can get it there when I need it.
Yeah.
That's,
No, it's
that's what matters.
the world of DR is all RPO and RTO.
All these alerts basically are based on what's happening, whether it's a warning, whether it's an error, right? We do show you the job ID. So one thing I didn't walk you guys is jobs. So every backup or a restore or a DR is a job, right? And you can track them. So for example, here, if I go and look at any of these jobs, so if I pick this file server job and if I click on the job ID, it shows me when it started and all that information. But it also shows me how much data was scanned, right? How many files have been changed? How much bandwidth did it use to upload this data to cloud? All these numbers are available. Along with that, you can also view progress logs. Along with that, you can also download detailed logs. So it's a single console. You can get all the logs. You don't have to run to the client to grab those logs. So you can go and sort them out as well. Sorry. For example, job type. So this is the DR restore. So I can go and see when the DR restore happened. I can go and look at the job ID. And when I look at the job ID, I can look at the progress logs as well. Any errors, so I can go and change by status. So for example, if I want to go and see failed backup, so this is my failed backup. I can go and click on the job, and it will tell me why it happened, why it failed, and all that, right? Talking about reports, reports are something which you can go and subscribe as an admin. If you're not subscribed, we don't email the reports, but you can always come and pick any report and click, and it will show up in the console itself. I don't have a restore report for last 30 days, but I can go and look at the backup activity report. Good. Okay. So you can go and look at the report. It can be emailed you as well. So that's a quick demo. I didn't go into backup policies, which allows you to select different options, like do you want to do pre and post scripting? If it's VMware, do you want to enable CBD, VM quasi-king? All those different options which you use depending on what workloads you have.
I think I'm probably reiterating the same thing, right? But I think what we see in the market is there's definitely a lot of readiness for customers to move to the cloud. And the fact that we are cloud native and being able to architect this as completely architected in the cloud, ability to collect all of this enterprise data into one single data lake and then providing that the value, right? Backup data is no longer just dormant data sitting in a in a shelf or in an appliance, but there's so much more use for that data, and I think that's what that's a potential for our solution as well.